Good afternoon, everyone, or actually good evening. This is Elizabeth Lee Beck. I'm here for the the Cranky Lawyer Weekly live stream. And I apologize that the background is a little different today and the camera might be a little bit shaky. I'm actually live streaming from my hotel room here in Philadelphia. We are here for Jared, my law partner, to give a talk at the Philomathian Society at the University of Pennsylvania on Tuesday. But I still wanted to give my weekly live stream. We have a very interesting topic today. The initial plan was to give a talk about the extent of state action on certain dominion of your bodily functions, namely breastfeeding and vaccinations, which are very interesting topics. But since then, I've received several inquiries about sealed indictments and grand juries. So I wanted to address that in a special episode today because there's been a lot of speculation and chatter about what are sealed documents, why are indictments sealed, and what is the nature of grand juries. Hi, Amy. So, the first thing I would like to say is, if you go to www.jampack.us / and go to the document, the blog post that I have all the Cranky Lawyer live stream documents, I've uploaded my notes and I've uploaded some documents that I downloaded from Pacer for the Manafort indictment as an example. But I'm going to start from the very, very beginning. So, one of the first things I want to address is there's a lot of chatter on 4chan, on Poll, the Washington Post, the New York Times. Everybody seems to want to have a desire to pitch in their 2 cents about sealed indictments and sealed documents. Okay, so I am not going to engage in any speculation on this live stream. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by talking about what a sealed document is in the context of a court case. What is sealing? All sealing means is that document, an individual document that's filed in court, can be sealed, or an entire case can be sealed. If a case is sealed, everything filed in that case is sealed. But what sealing means is that document or the whole case is hidden from public view. Okay, that's the only thing you can gather when a document is filed under seal. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily a criminal case. There are documents that can be sealed in civil cases, which is when people sue each other, or in criminal cases in which the government is suing an individual for criminal violations to put them in prison or what have you. So how does a document end up getting sealed? Now, each jurisdiction, whether it's state or federal, they have their own rules for sealing. Now, if you look at my notes, for example, in the D.C. federal court, you can look up the local rules for the D.C. federal court. And Local Civil Rule 5.1H talks about what kind of documents get sealed in civil cases. It says that absent statutory authority, no case or document may be sealed without an order from the court. So you have to get an order from the court if it's a civil case. And I just want to say that sealing is fairly common. If you look at the local civil rules for the D.C. Circuit, Local Civil Rule 85 says that all petitions under the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and Consumer Protection Act shall be filed under seal. Okay, that's a whole category of documents that are just not visible to public review. Okay, And Local Criminal Rule 9, subsection 6, talks about how documents end up getting sealed in criminal cases. So if you want to look at the procedural, how individual courts deal with the sealing of documents, you can look at their local rules, and it tells you what the procedures are. So now let's talk about a certain type of sealed documents, namely those in the criminal context. So what is an indictment? So an indictment, now we're talking about criminal cases, right? An indictment, according to dictionary.law.com, is a charge of a felony voted on by a grand jury based upon a proposed charge, witnesses' testimony, and other evidence presented by the public prosecutor. Okay? To bring an indictment, the grand jury will not find guilt, but only the probability that a crime was committed, that the accused person did it, and that he or she should be tried. So an indictment is, let's say, law enforcement or detectives, the FBI, what have you, they do an investigation and they make an arrest. And then the next step is that evidence is given to the district attorney or the prosecutor or the AUSA in the federal context, and then they present that evidence to a grand jury. Now, they can present witness testimony, they can present other types of evidence, but the person that they're indicting is not there. So that's where the phrase, "you can get a grand jury to indict a ham sandwich" comes from. Because the person that's making the presentation is the prosecutor. Okay? And he or she doesn't have to prove guilt. They just have to say, well, let's go on with let's just proceed with the criminal case. Okay, so that's an extremely low bar. And the person that they're trying to indict, they're not necessarily there to even give testimony in their defense. Okay? So that's what indictment is. So when you have a full-on jury trial and both sides give evidence to a jury, and the jury acquits you, you are a free man or a woman. That's just a regular old plain jury. But a grand jury is there only to hear the prosecutor or the USA's presentation of evidence for an indictment. Okay, that's their job. It's a low bar. And that's what a grand jury is for. And in my notes, I put a couple of YouTube links that I found to be helpful on what exactly a criminal indictment and a grand jury does. You can see the criminal indictment in the Casey Anthony trial, which is a state court federal trial. You may remember that case. That's actually available on YouTube. It's very short. You can take a look at that. And then there's another video, that the link that I provided, and that talks about it's a tutorial on what it means to serve on a grand jury in a federal case. So why are these indictments under seal? Grand jury proceedings are secret. They are not open to the public. That is why grand jury indictments are under seal. The proceedings are led by a prosecutor, and although court reporters can be there, the records themselves are sealed. And grand jury proceedings in federal cases, the secrecy was upheld by the United States Supreme Court in 1979. So now, I've uploaded some documents in the Manafort indictment. You can see the motion to seal. You can see the motion to unseal. You can see the indictment. But because these proceedings are under seal, until they are unsealed, any speculation as to who they are seeking to indict is absolute guesswork, and I'm not going to engage in it. I'm actually very dismayed to see media outlets such as the Washington Post and the New York Times engage in rampant speculation. I think that's irresponsible reporting. The only thing we, the public, can do is to wait until the indictments are properly unsealed, which generally happens after the criminal defendant is apprehended. So one other thing I wanted to mention is how to interpret case numbers. I saw on 4chan, I believe it was 4chan, folks were looking at case numbers and trying to speculate about what the sealed documents involve. So I'll give you guys a little bit of the tools of the trade on how to interpret case numbers. So let's look at a document that I uploaded, which is the USA versus Manafort case, criminal case. Okay. The case number is, if you look at the top of the document, it's 1:17 CR 00201 ABJ. Okay? Generally in federal courts, you can get a lot of information out of the filing, out of the case number. Generally, the number one pertains to some sort of division. It's not that important. But the next two numbers are very important. 17. That means this case was started in 2017. Okay? So if you see a case where a document was filed under seal, but those two numbers are 14, that means that's a 2014 case. Okay, it's an old case, so it's probably not a case, even if the documents are under seal, that has anything to do with some recent events that are happening. So this is a fairly new case. This was filed in 2017. The next two letters say CR. That means it's a criminal case. Civil cases say CV. If you see a case number and it says CV, there's not going to be any criminal indictments in there, okay? That's a civil case. And the next numbers, 201, means it is the 201st case filed in the year 2017, okay? And the last three letters, ABJ, that's usually the initials of the presiding judge. And in this case, ABJ stands for, let me see if I can find, well, this was signed by the magistrate judge, but it would be the main federal judge that was presiding on the case. Okay, so why do we have grand juries? Okay, now we're going to go back to the Constitution. Hi, Nicole. The reason we have this process called the grand jury actually goes back to the Fifth Amendment of the Bill of Rights to the United States Constitution. And the Fifth Amendment says, no person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury. So, for felonies at the federal level, you can't actually get arrested and trial set in your case until your case on a preliminary level is presented to a grand jury, and they collectively decide to indict you. The Fifth Amendment also talks about your right to, the Fifth Amendment also talks about your right to not incriminate yourself. That's why it's called pleading the Fifth. The Fifth Amendment has a lot of rights pertaining to a criminal defendant's civil rights. But that's where the grand jury comes from. So I hope this has been educational for you. I invite you to look at my notes and download the documents that I've uploaded, and I've really limited this live stream into information that is free from speculation. So I'm not going to speculate on what types of indictments are being filed under seal right now, because all it is just making stuff up. So I'm not going to engage in it. And finally, I want to give a shout out to new patrons: Samantha, Amy, Stephen, Teresa, Jerry, Mel, Jerry B, Kathy, Allison, Twana, Chi, Susan, Kat, and Amy. These are the latest patrons for this Cranky Lawyer live stream. So thank you very much for your patronage. And next week, I hope to go back to regular programming and talk about vaccinations and breastfeeding laws. All right. Thank you very much. Have a nice weekend. Bye-bye.